senior pastor, if students aren't coming to the main services at your church, that's your problem as a senior pastor, not the youth pastor's problem. It's not even the parents' problem. If you're not acknowledging that young people are in the room, they're going to start vacating the room.
Hey, welcome to Church Chat, a show where we have the conversations about ministry that you wish you were having. Maybe you don't even know you wish you were having them, but you are going to wish you were having them. My name's Josh.
And I'm Emily, and before we introduce today's guest, we'd encourage you to go back and listen to our primer episode, where we introduce listeners to the whole concept of Church Chat. You'll be able to get to know us a little bit better, and it really sets the tone for what we're trying to do with this podcast. So let's get to it. David Boerema, welcome to Church Chat.
Welcome,
yeah,
David.
Good to be here.
Before we get into the formal bio of David, we're introducing this more fun way of introducing guests. So we thought it'd be fun to play a little game, David. What are two truths and a lie? And then Emily and I will have to figure out which one is.
Which I feel like you have an unfair advantage because you know him better than I do.
I do.
Does he though? Does he?
Yeah, okay, maybe.
Hey.
Two truths and a lie about David Boerema. Number one, Facebook Marketplace is my playground. Number two, I got a 3.8 GPA at Moody Bible Institute. Or the third one, I've only dated two people in my life.
Oh, man.
Okay, I already know. I think I know what the lie is.
You that fast?
Was that obvious?
Well, I feel like the Facebook Marketplace is too just niche to not be true. I feel like that is totally a truth. I've heard you say that you weren't a great student, so I'm going to go with that the GPA was not correct. That's the lie?
Don't answer yet. I don't know. Like, I think high school David was a player, but I know he went to Moody, but I don't know how good a student he was. I know he got in a fight with his own teammates on Moody volleyball team.
We'll talk about that later.
And I know he's a Facebook Marketplace guru because only Facebook Marketplace people that use it a lot would call it their actual playground.
Yeah, which I feel like I'm going to have follow-up questions about that if that turns out to be true.
So I'm going to go with, but he's super smart too. All right, I'm saying he dated more than two people.
The lie is that I got a 1.9 GPA my first semester at Moody Bible Institute.
What?
And they almost kicked me out. And you don't recover from that the rest of the time. So I think I ended with like a 2.6. So I am not a textbook digest information and spit it back on a test, multiple choice or fill in the blank or essay. I was a terrible student.
It was just
Shauna, my wife, is an amazing student, but not me. So yeah, it's true. I only dated two people in my life. I dated a girl in high school. Then I met Shauna my junior year at Moody and never looked back. And I'm glad that you guys thought that maybe I was a little bit of a player, but no.
You're
not
a
at
handsome
all.
guy.
I feel like Josh is a player in this group.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
There's a string of broken hearts.
With that long hair when you were younger.
All right. So moving on. So that's really interesting because, man, it just goes to show all you kids out there listening, you don't have to be a good student to be enormously successful.
Exactly.
Yeah, to be on a podcast that, 4 people are going to listen to.
And for those of you that don't know, we have a lot more than 4 people listening. For those of you that don't know, the real David is a Moody grad, as you picked up. He only dated 2 people in his life. And former youth pastor with tons of experience in the youth ministry world. And then you moved on to start, and I'm not sure, I think you started district work first. Right.
Yeah.
So now you're
serving in our district for just coming alongside of youth workers and coaching in that capacity with the Reach Students Council. That's the kind of the EFCA's student ministry department, Reach Students. So serving on that team in a volunteer role, and then coming onto the team with the district, and then leading Apex, the short-term missions opportunities for the NextGen in the EFCA. So helping students, high school and college students, dip their toe in the water of missions and asking them all along the way, hey, is this maybe something God has for you? So mobilizing students to the mission field and to ministry is what we do now, and love it. Yeah.
From here to everywhere. That's
from here to
your
everywhere. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love
We talk
that.
about, wherever you come with Apex, and then wherever God sends you, whether it's full time to the mission field or full time back to your locker room, your workplace, your home, wherever that is, that you'd be a gospel influencer wherever God's taking you.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but I heard through the grapevine or somewhere that you guys are like slammed for the summer trips.
Yeah, my team's just doing amazing. Our youth trips that we have stateside and internationally are basically sold out. We're almost to 700 for this next coming summer, which is an amazing blessing after COVID shut us down for a couple of years.
Fantastic.
So to have that many youth groups, students coming, and then we probably have right now right around 20 college students who are going to go 3 or 6 weeks with our Reach Global partners all over the world at 5 different sites. So super excited about that. Looking for college age staff to join our staff for the summer here stateside. And but yeah, God's really given us a great opportunity to come alongside of some students and help them take next steps with Jesus.
And what's interesting too, the COVID shutdowns could have been like really like a game ending for your type of trip. I mean, you literally couldn't do it if you wanted to. You couldn't take.
Yeah, there's a lot of organizations that just had to close up shop and couldn't keep moving forward. And
you guys pushed in.
We weren't one of those. Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
And you pushed deep in, and kind of like, in my opinion, you leveraged that time to really kind of build a system, develop some deeper relationships. You worked hard on like marketing, figuring out how to communicate to the audience and to the churches. Like you drove. You want to talk about that just a little bit? How you kind of leveraged that?
We couldn't lead trips, and so we said, well, how are we going to use our time? And so we just went to work and built out new tools and disciple making materials for students that would be participating. We built relationships with places like Moody and Liberty and Trinity and different colleges. We built relationships with churches. We found that the best way to mobilize people is to go to where God's people are, and that's at the church. And so just going and building friendships with youth pastors and college pastors, missions pastors, and just building trust there. And when you have trust, people want to participate. So it's been super rewarding to see the fruit of that labor during COVID come to fruition right now.
So part of the conversations we want to have is like just get real about what's going on in ministry life, and one of the reasons I was so excited to have you on here is I'm a lead pastor. You know, Emily and Tim are deeply ingrained. Tim's a campus pastor there. And Emily's very involved in the ministry in New York. And I got to tell you, man, like not only do I find this kind of like new chapter of youth ministry to be a struggle for us as a church, I'm also like feeling like I'm hearing this tension a lot about how, you know, lead pastors have a certain set of expectations of what successful youth ministry looks like, but it's not necessarily lined up with reality. And I'm like, are we operating on like some early 2000s, 1990s model that we are still trying to prop up when youth ministry has completely changed? And to me, I feel like that's causing a lot of problems, not only within teams, but it's also not really helping us effectively reach the next generation. Do you sense that, like that kind of like tension between what was and what is?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, so I was a youth pastor for right around 20 years. And, you know, everybody who hits that stage of life that I hit has to ask the question, what's next? And so many people expected that I was going to lean into being a senior pastor. And that's just not that's just not who I am. It's not the makeup. It's not my gifting. It's skill set. I could probably pull it off. I could probably fake it for a few years until people really got caught wind of like, oh, this guy is not a senior pastor. But I often think like, if I was a senior pastor today, what would I need from my youth pastor? What would I need? Because, you know, nobody likes to say that they were successful, but I think we had a pretty good run in fantastic leaders, and we had some incredible moments in student ministry. And I think if I were a senior pastor today, I'd be wondering like, hey, what what from back then still works today. And I would need my youth pastor to convince me one way or the other. And so and you're stating that tension well. I think there's a lot of guys who, a lot of leaders who are my age and maybe a little older, who went through that season of the late 90s, 2000s, where, man, you could do just about anything and kids would show up and you'd just have fun, and you'd have all kinds of opportunities to pour into students' lives. So those days are over. I just think we've gone from the masses to the individual, and I would need my youth pastor, and I think youth pastors and college pastors need to be communicating, in a sense, re-educating their senior leaders on what ministry looks like today with this next generation. Otherwise, that miseducation or that misunderstanding of what youth ministry should look like from the senior leaders is going to be perpetuating the friction. And so I think youth pastors, they owe it to their senior leaders, they owe it to themselves to help educate those they report to what student ministry is really like today and how it's different than it was in the past. And I think one of those things is just thinking more individual.
Yeah, that's good.
It's not about how many people showed up at the program that week. It's how many people are we actually connecting with? How many people are calling this church, this place, their home? How many people are relying on our relationships to make it through this week? And what a normal week of student ministry looked like back then is a far cry from what a normal week in student ministry looks like now. You know, the things that students are coming through the doors with today only came through the door maybe every 8 to 10 weeks, and maybe once a quarter. The tragic things, the hard things, the anxiety, the weight of life, that usually came through the door once in a while. It might pop up on a weekend, a retreat, or on a trip where we've got lots of time together and people got real transparent. Well, that stuff comes through the door every week with every kid now. And they are looking for a place to unload and just to get a respite from what's going on in their lives. And so that's how, student ministry has changed dramatically in that fashion. And it's because of where we are today in our world.
I feel like I have so many follow-up questions, but I want to return to something that you said about success. How did you define success when you were a youth pastor?
Did I not get any follow-up emails from parents the next day? That was success. Did the vans get gassed up and put away where they were supposed to be put? That was success. No, I think success for me changed over the years. I think there was a real sense of like, I've got to prove that youth ministry is worth it in the church in the first couple places I served, and people look at that from the outside in, and they just look at how many people are showing up and what are the stories that we're hearing? Are students happy to be there? Are they engaged and things like that? And I think success for me changed a lot later on, where I started asking myself, does the number on a particular night matter, or is the number that we how many contacts that I have with a student one-on-one or with my leaders one-on-one, is that what really mattered? I think the numbers game started to change for me and count the real numbers. I started asking myself, how many students are actually becoming influencers with the gospel? How many students are actually taking next steps with Jesus? Not just hearing about the opportunity to take next steps with Jesus, but actually taking a step of faith towards a lost friend, or taking a step of faith in leading something in our ministry or in their school. Students who are actually making their faith real and trying to understand who Jesus is and what he wants from them. How many students are actually doing that? That became the measure of success. The amount of students that showed up on a Wednesday night, that sometimes that was a real headache.
Yeah, my husband was a youth pastor for 11 years, and just I was one of those adolescents who was in a youth group for like late 90s, early aughts, and so like it's not a new paradigm that like there are really popular youth groups, and so they get lots of numbers, but then that ebbs and flows, and I think there's always a tension between getting numbers, but also discipleship. And I think those are
Right.
two things that are sometimes in conflict with one another. And I think it's
Right.
really difficult when your senior leadership is wholly focused on numbers and not understanding what somebody's trying to do with discipleship. And that is naturally going to maybe have a little bit lower numbers, or they're just not focused on the gimmicks that get people in the door. And so,
Right.
like, what do you do when your senior leadership, like, doesn't get it, makes it
Yeah.
like not a priority, like that for them, that just, it doesn't matter to them. They view success as the numbers and they're not into
Well, I
the other
think there's
stuff.
probably a place for both. When I was in high school, I went to this little Bible church in the suburbs of Chicago, and there was maybe 15 to 20 students in middle school and high school combined. But right now, if you fast forward, there's probably 8 of those people in full-time ministry.
Wow.
That sounds like success to me, you know? And our former youth pastor can hang his hat on that with pride in the best sense of the word, that that he invested in a handful of young people who chose to give their lives to the church and to ministry. Like, to me, that's amazing. And then there's a bunch of them who didn't go into full-time ministry who are serving the church well right now. And so to me, that sounds like success. But I think that numbers game, there are some there is some validity to, hey, like, is what we offer to the next generation something that they actually want to be involved in and want to invite their friends to? We've got to be creative, and we've got to have things that students want to be at and they feel comfortable to invite a friend to. And nobody wants to invite their friends to something that's going to be really cringy, you know? And so, you know, having things that are regularly a part of the offering in the student ministry, let's call it program, is really important to have some of that stuff. But then you also have to have those environments where those who want to take next steps and want to go deeper have the opportunity to do that. And so, you know, the Sunday morning opportunity, sometimes that's not the place for that, because there's new people at church, or on Wednesday night, if you're doing Wednesday night programming, we typically had that programming focused on making an environment where students could bring their friends. But then we started something else on a Sunday evening we're diving deep into the Gospels, looking at who Jesus is, how he did ministry, how we can do ministry like him, how we can influence our friends with the gospel. And we saw that group of students really actually telling their friends about Jesus, and their friends were coming to know Jesus. And then they're getting involved in our ministry. And the numbers grew. And so I think there's a place for all of it. But again, I just go back to I think it's the youth pastor's responsibility to keep, in a really helpful way, educating their senior leaders on what is important and how to balance those numbers well.
Okay, so, you know, I'm a lead pastor. I want you to give me unfiltered Dave to Josh. Get your head out of your rear end. This is what my expectation of youth ministry should be.
If that was happening over lunch and you're my senior pastor, I'm going to hope that I have stories to tell you from the field about students and their lives. I'm going to try to help you understand that the way that people, and you as a senior pastor probably already feel this, that people don't attend church the way they used to attend church.
Right.
What used to be a regular attender, not a regular, that number has changed. And so the amount of times that you see people can't be the indicator of success. That's why I said, how many people call this church their home? How many students would say, that's my youth group? And then I'd want to tell you stories of the coffee that I had with a student where we were actually talking about life, and they were telling me there's nobody else I can talk to like this. Or I'd want you to hear the stories of the adult leaders that are volunteering in the ministry who are weekly making investment in the lives of students, and it never shows up on at the address, the mailing address of the church building. I'd want you to hear the pleas from parents who are just asking that there be another adult in my son or daughter's life, and that the church, the student ministry, is actually fulfilling that need. Those are the things that I think are so important that just go unnoticed, but they're actually the foundation, actually the bedrock of student ministry today that make the biggest difference. My boys are 19 and 21. And I left Hershey as the youth pastor when Tyler, my oldest, was a freshman. And all Shauna and I wanted and prayed for and longed for was adults who would love our boys and say the same things that we were saying to them over the dinner table, that they would say it to them after practice or after a football game or at McDonald's or at Starbucks, that there would be somebody who loved our sons enough to make a few minutes of their week available to them and go and spend time with them and point them to Jesus. That's student ministry today. It's not the how many people are in the worship band and the smoke and the lights and the how many people are running around playing nine square. It's the leader sitting against the wall, a student who's just trying to figure out how to navigate this heavy life that it feels heavy to them. And so to me, that I'd want you as the senior pastor to know that all that's happening and it does not show up on an attendance record.
Yeah, it's not in planning center.
No, exactly.
So what's the future of student ministry look like? Do you feel like you can see around the corner at all? Like, what's that?
Well, I just met with a youth pastor this morning, and I said, what do you really feel like you're becoming an expert in? Like, what do you like? If I had to really push you and say, hey, what are you really good at? I asked him that, and he just said, in my first couple of years of ministry, I have learned that I have to be able to change. I have to be flexible. I have to be ready to know that this thing that's working right now is probably not going to work in 8 weeks. And I can't just retread all the time the things that I've done in the past that worked. And I'm hearing that from veterans. I'm hearing that from rookies and everybody in between, that there's nothing very real predictable in student ministry right now. And those who are successful, and we already kind of defined that, what we're talking about as far as success in relational ministry, are finding ways to stay connected with students and get more adults and more people connected with their students to live life with them. So if I were to peer around the corner, I don't think the expectation should be that the parking lot is full, banged up Honda Accords, 2006 Honda Accords with students flooding into the building. I think student ministry, the expectation shouldn't be there. The expectation should be that there's a bunch of students in their leader's car headed to a football game or hanging out after that football game, or and talking about the real things of life, talking about how Jesus really made a difference. It's like, hey, if you can get to the question, can I tell you what Jesus has meant to me? If a leader can get there, man, they're gonna have opportunity to really make an impact in some students' lives, because students want to know. They want to know, what difference does Jesus make? Because people tell me that Jesus make a difference, but I'm not seeing it. And so if you can show me, you can tell me and show me with your life how Jesus has made a difference, I might give it a shot. So this youth pastor I was talking to today has got responsibility with college students, and he just said, it feels like some of the college students that are coming to our church on Sunday, they're giving Christianity one last shot.
Mm-hmm.
And so if a leader can be knee to knee with them and just get to the place of having the conversation of like, hey man, this is what it has meant for me to have Jesus in my life in the midst of all this chaos, we're actually going to help students see what it really means to be a follower of Jesus. And I think that's what whatever you can do to get that to happen.
Yeah.
I think that's what student ministry will look like in the next 5 or 6 years. And let's not hang our hat on, well, we had X amount show up at this or go to that or whatever. Who cares? You can get people on a bus, but can you get in conversation with them? That's the key.
It's kind of refreshing to hear.
Totally.
I mean, we're a 2-campus church. We track a lot of numbers, and we always talk about how those numbers aren't the real metric of what God's doing. They just help us make good decisions. But still, that temptation is always there. It's something you have to fight against. Like, oh, the crowd is not the metric. The thing I'm going to take away from this first part of the conversation is count connections, not attendees.
For sure. And I think I was always really curious to see who's new that came and who brought them. Like, that was a big deal. But what was an even more important thing to me is I wanted to find out from our student, how do they get them there? Like how did that go? Because that's the real success. Like a girl who her best friend wasn't a believer, and then all of a sudden she showed up at youth group. Come to find out that the girl that was part of our youth group was part of our Sunday night disciple making program, right? The thing that we called the disciple making learning community, and we just started praying. Our whole group started praying for this friend, and then I saw, and that whole group saw that friend walk through the door, and it was like, yeah, like to me, that's success. And I want to know the story of how they got there and then why they stayed. And then to see that girl then bring a friend of hers. Like, you want to talk about the sweet spot of youth ministry is when you've got generations of students coming because they're inviting their friends. That's so awesome. And what are the gospel conversations that they're having? And what did it feel like to step out on a limb and have that conversation? I don't care how many showed up. That was amazing to see that happen. And so, how many students are connected with adult leaders who love Jesus? I loved having, on Sunday morning, we had senior saints, 70-year-olds, 80-year-olds, who would come in and talk about, if I could write a letter to myself at 17, this is what I'd say to myself about following Jesus for the next 60 years. And it's worth it. Like, students were on the edge of their seat listening to the stories that these people were telling of God's faithfulness in their life. We got to connect students to the real life of Jesus, not just this come to church, sit, listen, go home, watch football. That's not Christianity.
Right.
You know? And then you also have to ask yourself, like, if you're counting numbers and numbers are going down, is that your problem or their problem? It's probably your problem. You know, if students aren't showing up to the main, Josh, senior pastor, if students aren't coming to the main services at your church, that's your problem as a senior pastor, not the youth pastor's problem. It's not even the parents' problem. If you're not acknowledging that young people are in the room, they're going to start vacating the room. So just letting, from the front, using an illustration that is from a high school hallway, not from, the corporate hallway, makes all the difference in the world to helping students feel comfortable being in those places.
So good. So I've heard you say, be flexible and invite all generations to participate in fostering connections with NextGen. Anything else that NextGen leaders should be focusing on right now?
The definition of hard has become soft. Doing hard things does not exist in our life anymore, especially in a young person's life. What they think is hard is not hard. I'm so ecstatic about my sons. Like, they're doing it. They're out of high school. One's in college. One's working full time, and they are doing hard things. And they're just like figuring it out. Now we're doing some coaching and things, but we're not doing it all for them. Right. And so they are embracing life, the good and the difficult, and they're doing it. But it is so hard as a parent to force my kids to do the hard things. I just want to make it easy and do it for them. And then, they don't have to go through the pain and the hardship and the suffering, but they lose all of the opportunity to learn the lesson. And that's just in parenting. We know that in parenting. But in church world and in following Jesus, we want to make everything easy. We want to make it, and when we make it easy, we actually cheapen it. It's not actually what Jesus called us to. He said, if you want to come after me, you must deny yourself. Hard. Take up your cross. Hard. Follow me. Hard. Like, there's nothing easy about any of that. There's a youth pastor that I respect. His name is Brent. He's in the Midwest, and he and I were having a conversation, and he just said, as youth pastors, if all we do is pull them close and coddle them and never push them out to do hard things, they never actually develop their faith in Jesus. They just keep running close to us. So we have to push them out to do hard things. And so if I were going back to my 22, 24-year-old self saying, what should I be doing in student ministry? And it was today, I would say, bring them close once a week, push them out there once a week. Or do a retreat that you pull close in the fall, and then in the summertime, put them in the hardest mission trip you can put them on.
Apex.
and exactly. Or we used to do high adventure camps in the summertime where kids were like screaming at the top of a 200-foot cliff as they were sticking their rear end out to rappel. Tears rolling down their cheeks, but by the time they got to the bottom, they're like, that was the best thing I've ever done in my life. I want to do it again. And because we pushed them to do hard things, and that was for fun. And so how are you going to get a student to actually talk to their friend about Jesus, which is really hard if they can't do the hard things, just, some of the little hard things that we ask them to do. And so I would build into my ministry rhythm a push and a pull them close, pour into them, and then send them back into their mission field, the school, and ask them to do something really hard, like encourage someone rather than tear them down. Really, really hard for a high school student to use words of encouragement.
Super hard.
Right? It's hard for us adults. Or to ask them to ask their favorite teacher how they could pray for them today. Like, what? No, not going to do it. Or to do something crazy, to say, hey, can I take you for their best friend? Can I take you for a cup of coffee and tell you what's made the biggest difference in my life? Like, that's what?
Oh, man.
No.
But can you imagine? I've spent a lot of time in another thing that I do with teachers. Man, a kid asks, there's at least one teacher per school that would just crumble crying.
Oh,
because a student asked them that. And that is like the beautiful stuff of life.
We every twice a year, maybe during the school year, we just take a Sunday and we would cancel Sunday school. And we would bake cookies in the kitchen. We would write handwritten notes to teachers, like not a specific teacher, just, hey, just want you to know today we prayed for you, grateful for what you're doing in the school. I know your job is hard, keep it up. And the student would sign it. We'd build these little gift bags, and we would then go to the school on a Sunday. We'd do a prayer walk around the school. And then on Monday, I'd bring all those gift bags to the school and put them in the teacher's lounge. And we had the church's email address on there, flooded. No one's ever done this before. I'm so grateful for that. Someone's praying for me. This job is hard. Thank you for acknowledging what I'm doing. It was like all of a sudden our students go, we did something super easy and it made a huge impact. What if I did something hard? And actually walked up to that teacher and said, can I pray for you today? And that's not even that hard in the grand scheme of things. I'll put a shameless plug here. At Apex, on basically every site, we have students go, we do prayer walks, but it's not just like silently walking down the street. Like, we go to Miami Beach and we hold out signs that say free prayer, and students are terrified when they see what we're going to do. Terrified. But I can't tell you, it's based almost 100% that the youth pastors who do that say, I cannot get my kids back in the van at the end of the night because they don't want to stop meeting and praying with people on South Beach.
That's wild.
We just pushed them out to do something hard, and they don't want to stop because they're like, I'm actually doing something that's eternal, that's worth it. And so getting them out of their comfort zone to do things, while it may cause you a little bit of pain as the leader in the moment, the long-term benefit to that will pay huge dividends down the road.
This episode is sponsored by EFCA East, a district of the Evangelical Free Church of America. EFCA East exists to help develop transformational churches among all people by helping leaders live well, lead well, and multiply. We're here to serve you, whether you're in one of the 6 states that make up EFCA East or not. You can find more from us at efcaeast.com.
I was with you this last summer when the ministry you oversee, there was like a very challenging, I want to say traumatic, very traumatic for the people that were there, that your team had to navigate. And I was actually walking with you in New Jersey when you got the call and had to kind of cut out to do some quick crisis management and help your team walk through that. So I was really impressed with that. And I just wanted to ask you, you have done so much ministry. You've coached other student ministry leaders, NextGen leaders in this. You've done it yourself. We all kind of, and it seems like increasingly more, there's just so much trauma that we have to help people walk through. It happens outside of our churches, in our communities. It happens within our church walls. Just in your experience, and I don't need like a bullet point thing, but what are some keys in like helping a team or helping a family or helping a student or whoever walk through some of the traumatic things we face in ministry or in life?
Yeah, I'd say first slow down. Like in a traumatic situation, it feels like everything is in hyperspeed. And so just to like slow down, take a breath. What is the actual thing that's happening here? What could be the right response? I think that comes with some experience. And for me, the thing I have to remind myself all the time is that I'm not actually the one who's going to fix this problem. I am just one piece of the solution of getting it fixed. And so, that situation that you're talking about is the first time in my ministry experience where we had a student who tried to take their own life on a trip with us. And it happened before the trip officially started, and a newer youth pastor who did not know what to do. I had a young staff on site who didn't quite know what to do. And so they called me, and that's when we were walking together and just had to slow them down and just say, okay, listen, this is not, by God's grace, the student did, the attempt was not successful, and we were able to get him the help that he needed. But just to like, what is the best thing for the student right now? What is the best thing for the person right now? And sometimes, we're like, well, the best thing is for us to keep them close. And like, actually in that situation, the best thing is for them to get closest to the people who care the most about them and can get them immediately the help that they need. That's way over our head. I am not a counselor. Our staff are not counselors in that respect. And so getting them to the place, the safest places that we can get them. So helping the youth pastor make the right decisions and helping them make travel plans and to get the student home and accompany it home and things like that. So just to slow down and go, what's the real issue? Who really can give the help? What is my actual role in this? And just helping them stay the course. I've talked with a lot of youth pastors over the years, and I had to reveal to them that like every time the bus would pull out of the parking lot of the church for a trip or a retreat or an event, I would just silently kind of pray to myself in the front seat, like, God, please don't let this be the trip where something tragic happens. And so grateful that God answered that prayer. Yeah. But that's not been the case for a lot of our friends. And so what I've observed and what I've experienced myself is that you just need to get real clear, real quick on what is your part in this, and not try to play a part that you can't play or that you can't actually have influence on. So typically for me, when some, the worst things for me is kids get hurt or whatever on a trip, and I'm pretty calm in the midst of the storm. And then after, I have to like go in the bathroom like 3 hours later and throw up. It's just like, okay, it's over and I don't have to be on, and I can like crumble alone and be okay with that. But yeah, I mean, we do live in a time where there's just a lot of stuff going on, and you can't expect to be the answer to every traumatic experience, and you just got to get people to where they can. You got to, and I would just encourage anybody who's in leadership to have at your disposal numbers of experts, the phone numbers of experts who you can call at a moment's notice and say, what do I do? And follow their expertise. And then as best you can, stay present. We were always on a rotation for hospital visits and things like that when I was on staff at the church. And I dreaded it because I always felt like I had to walk into a hospital room and like be pastoral. And in my mind, pastoral was I had to have the right passage to read. I had to have the right prayer to pray. I had to have and it was like going through some traumatic experiences myself in my own family and spending some time in the hospital. You just realize like what I actually need from our pastors and for the people that love us is just to be there. You don't have to say anything. Yeah. Being there is enough. be present and try not to say a whole lot. Just be there and love on people and encourage them. Go buy them a Coke when they need it. Those kind of things, and help meet some needs. But in those traumatic experiences, just be present and lean on experts, because you're probably not the one who's going to be the expert who answers the problem.
All right, I got one more question for you. So you spent a long time in ministry, working for the church, right?
Yep.
And you didn't move out of the area when you left your last church, because you kind of transferred into this different role, still in ministry full time, but you're not working for the church. That's different, like, man. And I know your journey like a little bit, and that's got some awkward stuff, even if you leave on good terms, when you kind of try to remain in the same church. And then, is that really best for your kids or your family? And then, I know now you go to another church that's been great for you. Talk about that. Like, what was it like kind of reconnecting with church after going through the process of leaving ministry? We hear all these stories about people leave ministry and then they're done, like just burned out, gave up on church. What was that like, kind of managing that transition?
I would say for 40 years. I was required to be at church.
Dude, you're
every
so
Sunday.
old. 40 years, that sounds like forever.
I grew up in a family that went to church, and every time the doors were open, we were there. We were serving, family was serving, all that kind of stuff. Then I went to Bible college, required to be at church on Sunday, then became a pastor, literally required to be at church for your job. And after I left full-time local church ministry, I was shocked at how easy it was to get into a rhythm of not going to church when it wasn't required. And going through that, I came to have a newfound and deep respect for people who choose to go to church every week. Not because they have to, but because they want to and they want to be a part. And I also felt a deep sense of regret and shame that I did not understand that about parents of adolescent and teenagers who fought the good fight to get their students to come. Because, man, is it work. It's work for me to get myself to go. It's work to get my family up and to go. And so I would say, like, I have deep respect for a newfound respect that I wish I would have had a long time ago for people who make being a part of the family of God a weekly rhythm in their life, even when they don't have to. I've just been so encouraged by seeing the same people show up every week. And I never had to have that pressure. I never had to work through that. It was easy to be at church because I had to be at church. So we've gone a little bit through that of just like, hey, we're making this a priority in our life. At later in life, after being out of the church, where many people have had to go through that early in life, we're going to make being at church a priority. So that's been a new learning. Another thing is, man, it is hard to get involved in a church. It is hard to find your way in. Even though I know from the church leadership side, we're trying to create open, easy, accessible pathways for people to make it into the church and be involved in the church. It doesn't matter. It's real hard to make inroads and build relational inroads with people. And so what we've learned is that we have to be intentional. Like, I have to take the onus on myself to go and meet somebody, or to show up at a church picnic and you're the only one is your spouse. That's been really, really interesting. If you want to feel what middle school feels like, go to a new church. It's the same feeling. The middle school youth pastor that I worked with at Hershey, his name's Craig Mart, and he had this statement that he said all the time that I just love. He's like, we need to take the awkwardness on ourselves. And so I just know that, like, it's awkward to walk into a new place, and I just embrace it and just go shake somebody's hand and go, find somebody that looks interesting and talk to them, or somebody who gave an announcement, and just figure out how to get involved. It's been a journey for sure, but it's been a journey that's really opened my eyes to, what it means to be, welcoming and open, and how to figure out how to get involved in church. I can't say it's been fun, but it's been eye-opening, enlightening, for sure.
We're going to wrap up this podcast episode. We ask all of our guests to share one thing that's saving your life right now.
He's
so
going to say Jesus.
It cannot be churchy. It cannot be churchy. It's like silly, serious, whatever. So I need you guys to go first to help me decide what I'm going to share.
Well, I already said one thing. Just the fact that my sons are actually embracing life. It's so like saving my life, knowing that they're embracing their life and I don't have to do that for them. So that's so helpful. But my wife, Shauna, and I, we were running for a long time and we just got really bored with running. And so we did something really crazy.
Did you get a Peloton?
No.
Okay, good.
Worse.
I was gonna. Okay. Oh no.
We joined a CrossFit gym.
David.
Good for you.
No.
And man, it's saving my life. And it's not because I want to like, some people join CrossFit because they're just want to be crazy fit and that kind of thing. I just want to be able to play with my grandkids someday. And so we've been doing it for 5 months, and there's been a significant change in energy, significant change in just like my knees don't hurt like they used to. My shoulders don't hurt like they used to. And I'm like getting stronger and more limber. And I hate going, but I love going. And Shauna and I have this commitment, like when one of us doesn't want to go, we're going to have truth talk to the other, and then we're going to go.
Yep.
And we have to do that for one another. And it's been life-giving physically, but it's also been really, really interesting to be at a place that's all about community. Like the reason you go is because you see the same people every day at the same time, and you're doing something nearly impossible together to make it through, and you're fist bumping and encouraging, and you're all this kind of stuff, and it's just like it feels so good, and it's with people who don't know Jesus, and I love being able to just introduce people and have great conversations while we're laying in a pool of sweat after dying at the CrossFit gym. So
cool, but also awful. So I'm really hoping Tim does not ever want to do that.
But we've been loving it, and it's been super helpful for us physically and building new friendships with people in our area that we would never have met if we weren't there.
Very cool. Josh, do you want to go or do you want me to go?
So I can go. We're not up to CrossFit level. Check this out. So Jen printed out a family workout thing, and she's like, "Man, you have not worked out in forever. We're going to start with the basic one." And I
got to start somewhere.
So literally, I think yesterday was the day 3. It was like 30 jumping jacks and 20 crunches. That's the level I'm on.
And you're sore today, aren't you? Are you sore?
A little bit. I'm not gonna lie. I got a little stomach cramp. But Philly sports right now. I'm gonna go anti-spiritual on this answer. It's just been sometimes a fun distraction is just great, So I'm loving like the Eagles go Birds and Philly off season. It's just fun. My whole family's into Philly sports, so we kind of share that, and it's been a lot of fun. So.
Well, mine is really similar to Josh's. Soccer is saving my life, and I never thought I would say that. Our family really got into the World Cup earlier this year, and I've never been a watching sports person. I always was kind of judgy about the people that would wear like jerseys to church and would rush home to get their Sunday football on, but that is like our family's routine now. That's how we relax on Sundays after church. We'll throw on whatever Premier League game we can, and it's just so much fun. Our whole family enjoys it. We're huge Arsenal fans, and so it's really fun this year that they're doing really well, and we've watched a lot of cool documentaries as a family, like All or Nothing about Arsenal and Welcome to Wrexham. So it's just been a really fun, unexpected family thing.
So you know what time it is. It's time to say bye.
It's super fun being with you guys, and have you back anytime you want.
You are an average guest. Literally, it's a really high average. He's our only guest so far.
That's true.
It's like saying you're the best. You are the best. I love you, man. It was so great. Good to hang out with you.
Appreciate you guys.
We just have this awkward way of just kind of saying like, see ya.
Bye.
Bye.